This is indeed a disturbing universe.
Hello, greetings, and welcome. Welcome to the Stereo 999 YouTube channel. I'm your host, the artist formerly and sometimes known as Stereo Steve. How you doing out there? Just chilling here with my pal, Mr. Gopher. Say hi, Mr. Gopher.
Oh, Mr. Gopher.
It's that time of year. Vinyl tag time. Vinyl tag 2026. And so I'm doing the David Atkinson Music and More, made the questions this time around. And there's a lot of questions. To be honest, I hated some of these questions, but I answered all of them, I think. You know, some of them I took more seriously than other questions. But I've got this cardboard box here that's full of all the records I want to talk about. You know, I'm going to try, basically what I'm saying is some of these questions kind of veered off into tangents where I'm going to try to bring them back to talking about records, which is really what this is supposed to be about. Question number one is show your best vinyl or other format musical purchase of 2025. I'm going to say, because this kind of bridges vinyl community with the other stuff that I look at on YouTube, and say this was my best purchase. This is Skyscraper by Fex, spelled F-E-X, the band from Germany in the 80s, who gave us the most mysterious song on the internet. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a link maybe to one of Wang's videos about it. But anyway, so they had a song called Subways of Your Mind. Somebody recorded it off the radio, and nobody knew what the song was until just about 2 years ago. And now the band is back together. And when I was first watching the videos talking about the search for this most mysterious song, I was like, when they find it, there's going to be an album, and I'm going to buy it. And this is some pretty solid mid-80s new wave music. And something I probably would have been into back then. But yeah, I'm not going to get too much in detail because there's a million videos that go into detail about that. The next one, favorite live musical experience for 2025. And that's question number two. And it was right around the end of 2025, in December. I went and I saw a couple of local artists did a concert in a movie theater, and that was just kind of a fun thing. Local San Francisco bands, and one of them was this band called Magic Fig. This is their album I bought at the show, Valerian Tea, and they are a female-fronted prog rock type of band, and I kind of get some vibes from like female-fronted psychedelia, like United States of America or 50 Foot Hose, but with that kind of prog rock time changes kind of pulse to the music. A lot of interesting time signatures and song structures, and they're worth checking out.
Hey, watch where you're going, you fool.
Question number three. Your record collection in 10 years' time. More, less, about the same amount? Well, I try to keep my collection down to what fits on the shelves in this dungeon here. And you know, like somebody else said, I'll be pretty old 10 years from now, so it's who knows? Who knows what's going to happen 10 years from now? But I'm guessing my record collection's either going to be roughly the same amount. I mean, I've been getting a lot more, but I'll probably sell some other ones to try to even it out. So I'll either have the same amount of records or it'll be completely out of control. Like Dr. Demento once said, you know, when I had to push records out of the way to eat, you know. Um, but, you know, maybe I'll be just fed up with this whole record collecting racket by then and sell everything. All of those are possible futures. So, yeah. What do you think, Mr. Gopher?
You know you're addicted to vinyl, Steve. You're gonna have records coming out of your ass.
Question number 4. You move into a new home. You play one record turned up to 11 to announce your arrival. Well, for this question, I'm going to recall a memory. Back in the 90s when I moved to my old place on Fillmore Street, and I had my stereo set up and I was in this room with kind of square standing walls and a really high ceiling. The reverb in the room was crazy. And I put on Inagata Davida by Iron Butterfly. Not just the song, but the whole album. And I'm going to show this CD reissue that has the kind of lenticular design. The song that really hit on that night was My Mirage. My mirage, I'll be drawing you soon. So, just because that's what I did, that's going to be my answer to that question. Question number 5. Show 2 albums, one each for your favorite male and female singers. Oh God, I hate these what are your favorite type of questions because, you know, you're singling out something and you're leaving out so much. I mean, you know, I feel like people are going to be, oh, well, if that's your favorite, what about this? You know, and it kind of makes for like cop out, everybody answering the same. I figure, you know, just steer it back to talking about records and I'll just pick interesting records by male and female singers. And for my male singer, I'm going to pick the man, the legend, Frank Sinatra. This is a man and his music, and I just kind of wanted to represent because, see, Reprise, you know, it was Frank's label, so his picture was on the label. Everybody else got a steamboat, but Frank got his picture on the label. Because my dad had this record, and my dad's been gone for like 20 years, and I've been kind of wondering what he would think of all this bullshit today if he was still around. And this album, I think there might have been a TV special to go with it, but this album is interesting because Frank like talks in between the songs. It's almost like a radio show. He talks about the song and then you hear the song, and that's kind of the format for this double album. And one time when I was a kid, my dad schooled me on Frank Sinatra. We sat down and listened to this whole thing. That's kind of a cool memory. For female, another one that has a story behind it, because that's really why we're doing this and answering these questions, is to tell stories, right? So this is Linda Perhacs, Parallelograms. Great psychedelic, folky singer-songwriter, and she made this album in 1970, and it kind of came and went, and then it became a rare collector's item, and it wasn't until sometime in the 2000s when they found her and found the tapes and reissued the album. And it's just some great introspective psychedelic folk. But anyway, she played a show at an art gallery in 2011 here in the city. And I took the bus to go see her, and I got lost. And I asked this kind of yuppie looking guy for directions, who pointed me in the opposite direction that I needed to walk. But thankfully, my spider sense could detect douchebaggery, and I did not follow the wrong directions, and I did make it to the show. The show was a little bit disorganized, but she played a nice set, and afterwards, she was selling these. I had the CD already, but this is the Mexican Summer double album reissue with the bonus tracks on the second disc. And I got it signed. Question number 6. It says, we like to have fun here. Show your top 3 soul dance records. And in my opinion, there's a flaw in that question that I will correct to make it, relevant to the annual vinyl tag concept, which is show your top 3 soul dance records you bought in 2025. So I'm going to do that instead of trying to go through my whole catalog and like, oh, what's my favorite? But these are 3 good ones that I bought in the past year. This is a new release. This is the Budos Band. Great fuzzy guitar and horn section and very funky. And this is their 7th album, Budos Band 7. They also did a live performance at a record store, which was very cool that I went to. But yeah, this next one, I knew this song from like 70s disco on the radio. I didn't know what the name of the song was, but Spotify threw it at me. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So it's Quincy Jones, Sounds and Stuff Like That. And I don't know if you could tell, but this is kind of an embossed copper colored thing on the record. And you might remember it's this kind of disco funk song that went, what makes you feel like doing stuff like that? What makes you feel like doing stuff like that? And, what makes you feel like doing stuff like that is a question that should be on everybody's mind today. So that one, that's the second one. And for the third one, I showed this for like 2 seconds when I did an unboxing, but I didn't really talk about, this is A Taste of Honey. And I said something like they're the female Brothers Johnson, because Brothers Johnson, they sang and one of them played bass and one of them played guitar. So Taste of Honey, you probably remember their song, we're gonna boogie, oogie, oogie till you just can't boogie no more. And that's a great song. There's a nice fuzzy guitar solo on the long version of it on this album. And this was one, every time I'd see this record in the wild, it was either beat up or warped. But I was able to find a clean copy on Discogs relatively easily. Question number 7. A real stinker. A song you hate from an album you love. This band is a sacred cow to a lot of people, the Beach Boys. And a lot of people really go hard on the hippie Beach Boys stuff from the late 60s and early 70s and forget that they used to play surf music, even though it's like in their name, being boys on the beach. But this is their album Surf's Up, which has a lot of really happy, uplifting songs like Don't Go Near the Water, Long Promised Road. Field Flows is a beautiful song. There's a song on here called Student Demonstration Time. And meant to be a parody of the old blues song, There's a Riot Going On. And when I first heard this when I was a kid, I was mildly amused by it. But really, it's a mean-spirited Mike Love stinker that just ruins the whole vibe of this album. Because when you really read the lyrics and listen close, it's mocking the people who were protesting the Vietnam War, including the students at Kent State. And today's political climate makes the song all the more unpalatable. But they were smart enough to make it the last song on the first side, so it's easy enough to pick up the needle and not hear it. Question number 8. If you had to pick only one album from each of the last 6 decades, what would they be? And yeah, one album per decade. Of course, it's going to leave out a lot of stuff. All right, well, here goes. For the 60s, I pick the Beatles' White Album because it's got quality and quantity and diversity. There's a lot of different styles, and it kind of sums up the vibe of 1968. You know, you can kind of hear that the Beatles are kind of on the verge of breaking up because a lot of the songs are obviously just coming from one of them. But it's still a group effort. This is the 10-year anniversary white vinyl that came out in 1978. Same copy that I got for Christmas when I was like, what, 12 years old maybe? Or 13. My grandmother got this for me. Thanks, Grandma. But yeah, the American ones, the white vinyl, the American ones had the purple label, and then the UK ones had the Apple label. But anyway, for the 60s, yeah, Beatles' White Album. For the 70s, it's one of my litmus test records, and that is Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And the reason it's a litmus test is because if anybody says to me that they don't like this album or they think it's overrated, then I know not to take any of their opinions about anything seriously because they are spectacularly wrong. But yeah, it's a MoFi. For the 80s, I'm going to pick the record I probably listened to the most in the 80s because I bought it the day it was released in 1983 and listened to it every day for more than a year after that and saw this band live a bunch of times, and that is Murmur by REM, Rapid Eye Movement, which got me down the whole Athens, Georgia rabbit hole. That's still, if I find out a band is from Athens, Georgia, I'm like, okay, they're gonna be good. There's gonna be something interesting about them. But yeah, no, this was back when you still couldn't understand what they were saying, you know. And at the time, I felt like it was kind of somewhere in between the Byrds and Wire, with their, because they were like mysterious but like super catchy at the same time. And again, this is a record where I've run into people who just don't get it, and is very disappointing. The album I picked for the 90s is The Orb's Adventures Beyond the Ultra World. And this is the original American single CD version, because originally the American version was truncated down to one disc, where the English version was a double CD. But Little Fluffy Clouds. I just remember back then somebody gave me the CD and I put it on, and just the way the music just kind of gurgled out of the speaker, I'm like, okay, this is kind of next level. Alex Patterson and the Orb. This was where techno music and progressive rock kind of merged, because suddenly the likes of Steve Hillage and Robert Fripp were getting involved in this stuff, and Future Sound of London were making these conceptual albums, and it wasn't just thumping techno music anymore. For the 2000s, I'm gonna select In Rainbows by Radiohead. It's not my favorite Radiohead album, but it's a good one. But this was transitional for them, and it was kind of emblematic of the way the music business was kind of going. Prior to this, Radiohead's contract with Capitol Records was up. And instead of renewing their contract with the major label, they decided that they would put out music on their own label. And they released this album on the internet, Name Your Price download. And that was the only way to get it for months. And a lot of people grabbed it for free. But did that bankrupt them? No. Because when they eventually released it on CD with some interesting packaging and better sound quality, because it was kind of a low bit rate, the free download, people bought it. When they did the vinyl release, people bought it. That's kind of become the MO for artists, that it was, get your music out on the internet so people can hear it, and the records and CDs will follow. And this was kind of the first time a band that was like this big marketed themselves in this way. For the 2010s, September 15th, 2011, I bought this album. This is West by Wooden Ships. And it's got a nice picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. Nice colored vinyl here. Looks like it glows in the dark, but it doesn't. But Wooden Ships, local band, kind of hypnotic, psychedelic stuff. If you like stuff like Loop, you will like Wooden Ships, and also their side project Moon Duo. But this is one of their best albums, and I bought it in 2011 when it was released. And some other stuff happened that day. That it was just a good day, and I just want to hold on to that memory. I mean, even if everything went to shit afterwards, because you got to hold on to something. Okay. Now this is the question here. Question number 9. You get the opportunity to spend a day alone with one artist. Walking a mountain trail or the beach or hanging out in the city. Again, I have to ask, what the hell does this cult of personality BS have to do with records we bought in the previous years? I did radio for 15 years. I met some rock stars and wannabe rock stars and cool people who ended up becoming rock stars later on. So this question is not so glamorous to me as it would be to some. Most of the time it's better to not meet your heroes because sometimes they turn out to be assholes. That being said, if I were ever in a situation where Willie Nelson passed a joint my way, I would feel obliged to take a hit. I'm going to show this. This is Willie Nelson Artist Choice. This is a CD I found in a bargain bin, and it's a compilation selected by Willie Nelson. And it's got Ray Charles, George Jones, Hank Williams, Simon Garfunkel, Leonard Cohen, Django Reinhardt, Frank Sinatra, Miles Davis. So I'm thinking this is probably what we would be listening to if we were passing a joint back and forth. Also, an aside, one rock star that I met when I was doing radio who was actually really cool and a really solid dude was Thurston Moore. That was probably one of the funnest interviews I ever did in 2006 when I interviewed Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth on my radio show. This is a promo copy of his 2011 album, Demolished Thoughts. And the promos, yeah, they didn't have a front cover. They just kind of came like this, that Matador Records sent out. What would be, question number 10, what would be your must-ask question? Okay, and I'm gonna, first of all, I want to thank Martin the Martian for giving me shout outs when he did this. I appreciate that. I'm going to go with what he said in his video for this. He said there's 2 questions that should be on every list every year, especially now that, you know, the 2020s are 50 years after the 70s. Show an album that's 50 years old and this year. So a 1976 album for this year. And question number 2 is talk about an artist who passed away in the past year. So those 2 questions, you know, should be represented every year. And so I'm going to show one record that covers both of those. And this is 1976 Technical Ecstasy by Black Sabbath. I mean, what can I say about Ozzy Osbourne that hasn't been said? I will just say, you know, he kept true to his music and his vision right up until the very end. And Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die are pretty good. There's not really any bad Black Sabbath albums in the 70s. Question number 11. Show a record that contains a track that always brings a tear to your eye. Or are you a heartless bastard?
Yeah, Steve, well, you know, you are kind of a heartless bastard, but...
That's true. I am a heartless bastard. But heartless bastards have feelings. Since I gave my dad a shout out with Frank Sinatra, I'll give my mom a shout out. She's been gone 7 years. And whenever I hear Don McLean singing Starry, Starry Night, you know, Vincent, makes me think of my mom, because that was one of her favorite songs. This question was kind of tough. That's question 12. It's, show 3 albums from artists you've tried to love, but you're questioning why you bother. So something you tried to get into, but you're just not feeling it. A lot of stuff like that. If I gave up, then the record is probably gone. I'm kind of modifying. I'm going to throw, it says 3 albums. Do they mean 3 different artists? So I'm going to kind of modify this question. And these are artists that I do like to a certain extent, but I don't understand the religious cult that a lot of their fans seem to be part of. And first off, the Misfits. There are fans of this band that pay astronomical amounts of money for their early records and are just pretty much obsessed with them. And I think it kind of started when Metallica was citing them as an influence in the late 80s. But here's the thing. I first heard of the Misfits in 82, and they were what the kids now today call canceled, because there was an incident at one of their shows where someone in the audience got hurt really bad. And Google Misfits incident 1982, and I'm not gonna get into too much detail, but that was, there was that, and this album came out, and that was kind of it. I just kind of forgot about them. I mean, they're decent enough, kind of Kiss influenced punk rock, but I don't really get the whole religious cult of them. Another band, Depeche Mode, and I got a few of their albums that I dig, kind of classic 80s synth pop. But back then in the 80s, me and my friends, we liked some of their early singles, but then their first album, Speak and Spell, came out, and we all thought that it was just corny and not as good as Human League or OMD, and we just kind of wrote them off. And later on, somebody schooled me about how much they had improved with their later albums. And I had no idea. I had no idea. So that's that. And the third one, I'm gonna kill 2 birds and also answer question number 13 with this third one. It's show an album from an artist whose character disappoints you. And that question came up last year, and I said Ted Nugent. But this year, I'm going to say Morrissey and show the Smiths. And, a real fan of the Smiths will say, you don't get it. Their music is all about irony. And I get it, because, they're making music that's whiny and entitled and boo-hoo, poor me. Meanwhile, Morrissey is just a jerk in real life. And that's ironic, so I get it.
Damn it, Steve, you keep knocking me over. You're getting on my nerves.
This is indeed a disturbing universe. This is indeed a disturbing universe. This is indeed a disturbing. This is indeed a disturbing universe. This is indeed a disturbing universe. disturbing universe. This is indeed a disturbing universe. Indeed a disturbing universe.
As you can see, the lights are different. My shirt is different. I changed my mind about this one. I'm refilming for this question. Question 14. If you had to sell all your vinyl along with your record player, show the one album you would hold on to as a keepsake. Well, first of all, I would still have a bunch of CDs if it was just vinyl I was selling. So the question is moot. But also, yeah, this question really kind of broke my brain because this past year I've spent buying back stuff that I either had to sell or that got ripped off from me like 20 years ago, and revisiting that, trying to invoke the more pleasant time from the past, you know. And that's been taking my brain into some really interesting places. And I'm like, okay, what have I held? What's something I've held on to for a long time and never let go of? And so I'm going to say this, because I got this when I was 8 years old. This was the first picture disc I ever owned. Got it from Disneyland. Still got my marks on it. Disneyland Main Street Electrical Parade. And the song, of course, is Baroque Hoedown by Jean-Jacques Perry. And maybe they give him credit, maybe not. But yeah, like stretched out over two sides of a 33 RPM 7-inch record. And it still plays, and it's still in this crappy plastic. I should at least get a new plastic for it, you know, represent, you know, but yeah, I'll keep this. I'll put it on the wall. Question number 15. Discuss your VC highlight of 2025. If that's a video, link to it, blah, 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 blah. It could be a meetup or some event. Well, I'm going to say, there was a video I made, like, I think over the summer when I went to a record fair that was held at a brewery. And that was fun. I'm going to make that the answer to this question. Not because I found anything all that great. And, you know, there were some problems that I opted not to talk about and stay positive. But I did get a couple of cool records, but for the fact that it was a nice day hanging with my friends, and those are getting fewer and further between as time progresses, and how, you know, just being surrounded by friends kept me in a positive state of mind. I'm gonna name that. Question number 16. Name your favorite musical biopic, if you have one. Now, there were some good biopics. I liked Complete Unknown. I liked the Ray Charles one. There were a few biopics that I enjoyed. But the thing is, biopics are always a little bit cheesy. So, for this question, I selected a cheesy biopic whose cheesiness is apropos because it's about a band that was kind of cheesy to begin with. All right, so this is on VHS tape, previously viewed. Well, I paid $1.99 for it. This is Daydream Believers, the story of the Monkees. This is cheesy as hell, but it does tell their entire story, you know, about how they wanted to be a real band, and taken seriously, and you know, their run-ins with their management, and the actors that play them are relatively convincing. I mean, it's got the vibe of a made-for-TV movie, but I would say for somebody who doesn't really know anything about the Monkees and think they were a fake band through their entire career, that this is worth watching. This is worth checking out. And I seem to remember like putting on the DVD of this in the video store where I worked at the time, and Mickey Dolenz' commentary where he said, kind of compared being in the Monkees to Galaxy Quest, that they had to be real spacemen when they were just playing spacemen on TV, was the Monkees becoming a real band. Question 17. Give 3 reasons why jazz matters and show a favorite album. Okay, well, first of all, I'm just going to kind of freestyle here. I'm not going to portion out 3 specific reasons. Seems like that'd be the more jazzy way to approach this question, to improvise. But first of all, jazz is a cornerstone of American music, one of the most significant art forms to come out of this country's history. It's been around for more than 100 years, many different facets, Dixieland, swing, bebop, free jazz, fusion, and it's influenced a lot of other, adjacent music. I mean, progressive rock began as a way to incorporate aspects of jazz and classical music into rock as a way to expand the language. And, there's jazz in Steely Dan, in King Crimson, in Jeff Beck, in a lot of music you hear. And again, I am going to upgrade the relevance of this question by not like digging for an all-time favorite record, but talking about a couple of jazz records that I've found over the past year. And this one's a kind of interesting story here. This is Archie Shepp, The Cry of My People. And if you know Archie Shepp, he is mostly known for free jazz and kind of dissonant stuff. This record is more of a spiritual jazz kind of thing. And it's one of his rarest albums. And a few years ago, I found an empty cover of an original copy for $1. And a few months ago, I was on Discogs. I found a test pressing of the 2021 Vinyl Me Please reissue. And I thought, okay, I have to buy this so I can give it a home inside this cover of an original copy. As I put the little sticker there, the Vinyl Me Please category, catalog number. And yeah, so that was kind of one of the coolest things I did last year as far as reconstructing albums. Also, I want to show this. This is Jack DeJohnette's directions with the album Cosmic Chicken. And it's on Prestige. I didn't know about this record. I just kind of stumbled upon it. And Jack DeJohnette, great jazz drummer, also plays some piano. And he passed away this past year. And I had never seen this record before, and I thought I would pick it up. And it is pretty cool. It has John Abercrombie on guitar, and it gets into some really crazy, frantic fusion, but also has some nice piano playing. And it's got a track 1 for David Dip and the Professor. It's kind of paying tribute to Carlos Santana. And very cool. And I don't think it's on Spotify or on, I tried to put it on Instagram. There were no sound clips, so I guess this is rare too.
A few minutes later.
Anyway, I took a class surveying the history of jazz when I was in college, and just learned about how it evolved from the early 1900s, and about how a lot of the struggles of the musicians and some of the racism they had to deal with, and just how it was always about a musical vision, like Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, Miles Davis all made music in their time that people didn't get. Maybe they thought it was too dissonant, too experimental, and then people appreciated it later on. It's because they weren't trying to conform to a money making scheme. They were following the spiritual muse of the music, and it was reflecting the time. But anyway, whenever I encountered people who didn't like jazz, I always kind of sensed something kind of off. I mean, even if they had good taste in music, there was kind of a rigid attitude to what music they allowed past their internal gatekeeper. I talked before about working in a video store, and another day when I was working in a video store back in the 2000s, I was watching the Ken Burns jazz documentary, and there was a quote from the piano player Earl Hines that kind of stopped me in my tracks. I had to rewind the tape and write it down. And Earl Hines was asked about why he thought Germany was banning jazz music in the 1930s. And this was his response. He said, "Jazz expresses the hope of a free people who hunger for a better life. It is based on individuality, which is contrary to the very fundamentals of Nazism."
And then, you pick up a box, you get some stuff in here like some jazz bullshit. Here's Monk, Thelonious Monk. Anybody know anything about this? I know it's an original with the black stereo written in black instead of white. So yeah, it's a first pressing of this. I think it might be worth something. I don't know. I don't know if I'll keep this or not. I'm not really into jazz. Let's talk about something besides jazz. Let's talk about some real music, like Kiss.
For Kiss, German pressings are of interest for one obvious reason, and that is the way that the Kiss logo is presented. So the Kiss logo that we all know and love has the lightning bolt style S's, and in Germany I can see how it can be in poor taste to still present the logo in that style given the history of Gestapo and Nazi Germany. Plus, at the point when Kiss came out, it had become German law that anything involving those symbols would be banned from the country, so the Kiss logo was modified to include S's that kind of looked like Z's.
I was kind of dissing on these questions earlier, but you know what? At first I looked at these questions and I'm like, oh, Jesus. But these questions made me think. I had to put some time into this video, not just pump it out. But anyway, here we go. Now here's a question. Question 18. You're an innocent man or woman. Anyway, you're on death row. They give you one last song request to hear before they zap you. What do you ask for? And Dope Smoker by Sleep. Not on vinyl, on the CD. Dope Smoker by Sleep would be my request. And you know why? Because it's an hour-long song. And that'll give me enough time to either plot an escape or, for the governor to phone in a reprieve. That'll buy me another hour of life. If they were gracious enough to let me pack a bowl along with my last meal, even better. Okay. Question 19. Sell your favorite artist to a new listener. Show an essential album and explain why they should make time for it. Okay, so another one of those what's your favorite kind of questions. But again, I'm going to modify this question by making it about a record that I found recently instead of like a top favorite, because we got all year to talk about our top favorites, you know. This is supposed to be time to reflect. But what I'm going to do, I am going to sell an album by one of my favorite artists that a lot of fans consider like one of their worst albums. Okay, this is Crosstalk by the Pretty Things from 1980. And they're on a new label. They're not on Swan Song anymore. They're on Warner Brothers. And if you know the Pretty Things, you know that they were British invasion band. Started out doing blues like the early Stones, and then they got into rock operas and psychedelia with the masterpiece SF Sorrow. But by 1980, they're on Warner Brothers, and they want to keep with the times, you know. Their fellow British invasion cornerstones, such as the Kinks and the Who and the Stones, have all kept up with the times and had some success. So they're getting into some new wave on this record, kind of new wave power pop, and it's got some hard riffs. I mean, play this alongside like Say No More by Badfinger or any other power pop bands that came out around 1980. And it's a decent enough record. It's got the new wave kind of riffs. It's got some catchy hooks and choruses, and you know, they're trying to keep up with the emerging 80s culture. There's a song Office Love is a Bitch, you know, so they're playing for the hard-working yuppies who still want some rock and roll. But if you see this record for $1, it's well worth your dollar. This record turns up cheap all the time, and it's worth checking out. All right. Okay, so this last question is, you're arranging a VC meetup, and excluding those you've already met, invite 3 people you'd most like to meet. And like I said before, Martin the Martian gave me a shout out in his video, and gave me and Cosmic Brian a shout out. And I've not met neither of those guys in person. I mean, but I've talked to Brian on the phone a few times. I don't know if that counts or not. But yeah, I second his idea of me and him and Brian having a meetup listening session. I would probably also invite Clifford, the vinyl cheapskate, and should be a fun time. But anyway, that is my vinyl tag video. We'll see when I edit it whether it's gonna be like one big long video or whether it's gonna be spread out. And either way, I will return to the list of 100 psychedelic songs next time. Peace. Peace to everyone. Peace, love, and music.
Show and tell. just a game I play when I want to show you some records. So like and subscribe, and you'll see them next time too. Oh.
All right. Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Too many questions.